Okay, people are starting to file in. Welcome to the very last session, the best session, the keynote presentation of the third annual Ambition Customer Summit. If you joined us for the first three sessions, we started out with an amazing roundtable with our SDRs. We moved into a really unique and interesting use case of how our CS team uses Ambition to onboard and certify new reps. And then just 5 minutes ago, we ended our presentation from our CEO and our VP of product, all about the product roadmap. So huge, big day. Thank you so much if you have been sticking around with us the whole day. If you are not a customer and you did not attend those other sessions, well, maybe you'll become a customer, next year. We're going to do this thing in person, I promise. And someone that was with me in the very first year that we did this was Becc Holland. Next slide, please, Becc. She's driving. All right. Oh, it's just her picture. So you can see her face, but I am I got it. I am so incredibly thrilled to have Becc Holland here with us. Becc was a speaker at our very first Ambition Customer Summit 3 years ago. We had her in Nashville. We met in person. It was spectacular. And she is just now off of it. Was it 10 cities?
9
How many cities was it, Becc?
9. It was 9.
9 cities. I added a city. This is the 10th, the virtual city. She just concluded a 9-city in-person virtual tour with Flip the Script. Keenan was there. Who all was there?
You mean from the speaking perspective?
Yeah.
It was me, and it was Keenan, who authored Gap Selling, and he runs a company called a sales growth company. And then Scott Barker over at Outreach. He's the director of the world over at Outreach, for lack of better terms.
Yeah, director of all things. Yeah.
We had a number of different openers. We had Manny Medina, the CEO of Outreach, was an opener. We had Eric Gilpin, the SVP over of sales over at Upwork. We had Gabe Larson, the VP of marketing over at Customer. So it was a really, really fun thing.
Really, really fun. I was super bummed. Yeah, I think it was fun for everyone. I saw some pretty great pictures. So yeah, super bummed we could make it, but one of Beck's big talks, so this is never before seen in a virtual environment, is this one that we're going to hear about today, which is 2 toxic patterns 99% of sellers are using that cripple your pipeline and conversion, and how to avoid them. So super duper honored that you are bringing this content that you road tested out exclusively for our audience. Really, really appreciate it. I have one more slide, which is the boring housekeeping slide. This is AKA if you want to go, I don't know, get some water, buy some NFTs, whatever you want to do. This is when you do it, eat a fig Newton. Recording, I'm recording this. I would never not record something like this. I'm going to send it to you. So if you have to hop off, you're a loss. You're not going to be able to ask questions and get them answered, but you will get the recording in your inbox. Q&A, please type questions throughout. I know Beck's probably going to call on you. Please type them. You know the drill. You've all been on a webinar before. Also, though, if you do want to chat, for whatever reason, Zoom defaults to just chatting to not everyone. It's like just sending me a note. So make sure that you're chatting to panelists and attendees if you have something brilliant that you want to share with the entire audience. We do have a Slack channel. If you're a customer, you're already in it. If you're not a customer, maybe I'll DM it to you if you really want to join. But we do have an exclusive Ambitionista Slack channel. And then you can follow us along on social at CS2021 at Ambition Sales or hashtag. Do cool quotes of Beck's. So without further ado, I'm going to turn my camera off. I will be monitoring the Q&A in the chat the whole time though. So if you have questions or something, we will come back. I'll pop back on at the end and we will take your questions as you think of them. So I will leave it to you, Becc. Take it away, enlighten us, make me smarter.
That's a big toll. I like how she said that Jamie led with, I would never not record something like this. And I do that all the time. Zoom acumen, I don't think is an all-time high. So hi, everyone on the line. My name is Becc Holland. I run a sales media and consulting company called Flip the Script. So today I wanted to jump into it. If you wouldn't mind, I would like to make this session as engaging as possible, meaning I crave your thoughts, I crave your ideas, I crave what you're running into. So if you would lead by, if you could put your name, your company, and a trait of a seller. When you think of a seller, what's a trait that comes to mind? Good, bad, ugly. What's a trait that comes to mind? If you don't mind leading with that. But I wanted to jump into the content here. We're going to go. I'm going to be as meaty as I can and try to give as many takeaways as I can. So we're going to cover the 2 toxic patterns that 99.9% of sellers are using that can really cripple your deals, that can slow down conversion, I'm sorry, slow down your sales cycle, dip your conversion. And so without further ado, I'm going to get into the first pattern. So most of this is based off of, I don't know who in the audience is familiar with Eric Berne, but Eric Berne is known as the father of transactional analysis. And what that means is he was a psychologist back in the 50s, and he studied the transaction that 2 people were having by way of a conversation. So he came up with a litany of different theories, so to speak, that he proved out over his career. Absolutely mind-blowing body of work. And I would argue that he was the father of all sales training when you dig into it deeper. But 2 books to read by him that absolutely changed my career were Games People Play and Beyond Games and Scripts. And one of the patterns that we're going to go into, and the most damaging pattern that sellers are fitting into that can harm your conversion into booked meetings, into close one pipeline, into the sale of the deal, is going to be the pattern that they see you as a seller and that they're a buyer back. So Eric Berne in his book goes into a certain amount of games that people play, and when they're playing roles between one another. So roles and games that people play between a mother and a son, and people play, whenever you have 2 people that are siblings, for instance, or games that people play between 2 coworkers. But one of the games that he understood very well was that buying and selling is a game. And that's why people don't like being sold to. So in a prerequisite, it's defined as 1 or 2 or more players, where these opposees have a goal and they are withholding information because their goal is mutually exclusive. Meaning when I win, you lose. And because of that, I'm going to withhold a certain level of information to achieve my goal. So the most crippling pattern to any kind of sales conversation is that they see you as a seller because they're inserting themselves into a game. So I wanted to kick off, and this is going to be very, very interactive if you wouldn't mind. So when it comes to the goals of a buyer, if you could all go into the chat, what is the goal of a buyer when they're buying something? What are they trying to do whenever you purchase something, whether that's B2B software, whether that's, something for your, to enable your reps, like what is the goal when you're purchasing any item at large? Bingo, Megan already nailed it. Brilliant, Megan. To solve a problem. Bingo. Christine, you got it. Craig binged in here to obtain a service. But at the core of us, we are trying to solve a problem. Travis, we'll get into that. So I get a low price. So when I'm trying to solve a problem, am I trying to, and I want you to put yourself in a buyer mentality. Do you want to buy the most amount of products to solve that problem, or the fewest amount of products to solve that problem? As a buyer, do you want to buy more, or do you want to buy less to solve a problem at hand? Fewest. Christine got it. And do you want to buy those items at the highest price tag, or do you want to buy those at the lowest price tag? What's your goal in that situation? No cost. Christine, I love it. Gutsy. Lowest cost. Bingo. Joe, Heather, you got it. Lowest cost. So when I'm a buyer in the buying and selling game, my goal is to solve a problem at the lowest cost with the fewest amount of products. That's what I'm trying to do in the buying situation. So you all nailed it. Here's, the slide that I have: buy products for the lowest ticket price, buy them at a lower ticket price relative to your peers, the fewest amount of products that will help me. And the goal, all of that is, the goal is I need to solve a problem. So I have a problem at hand. So a book that I very, very heavily recommend if you want to understand how to sell based on problems is Gap Selling by Keenan. I just got to go on tour with him. Absolutely incredible, mind-blowing methodology. I've studied a lot, been a very big nerdy student of the sales game. And it's truly a mind-blowing methodology because it's based on problem. So I wanted to segue a little bit into his viewpoint on that. But there are 3 types of selling whenever you're selling anything. And the first type of selling is going to be product and feature centric selling. So known as a very big no-no in the sales community. It's the most often sold based on. And feature benefit / product centric selling is as if a patient walks into a doctor's office. And I hope that Keenan doesn't mind this analogy. I came up with it a couple weeks ago. But as if a patient walks into a doctor's office, and as if the doctor asks no questions, and basically just to sell to the patient one option and the pros of it and the cons of it and the benefits and the solutions, and forces the buyer to self-diagnose based on what they know, the problem that they're having, whether that's correct or not, and then also self-diagnose what medication they think will solve that problem that they have, based on the driver was the pain is what brought them into the doctor's office. So that's product feature centric selling. It sounds absolutely bizarre that someone would do that. That never happens. But that's product feature centric selling. Is essentially, I'm going to make the patient come in, and then I'm just going to start describing medications to them without asking any questions. The second type of selling that is the most dangerous in the market from my perspective is pain-centric selling. So pain-centric selling is a step in the right direction, but pain-centric selling is when you are selling based on the pains of a buyer. So a patient walks into a doctor's office, and essentially the doctor starts asking, what hurts? They say, my arm. They say, how long has it hurt? It's hurt for 6 weeks. How much is it hurt on a scale of 1 to 10? And they say, it's a 9 on a scale of 1 to 10. And the goal in this type of selling is that I want to get the buyer to talk about their pain, to manipulate their mindset into believing they need a medication. But that's the only goal of it, to drive urgency. And then the doctor starts describing a bunch of medications, not knowing what they're solving for. That's pain-centric selling. So again, the buyer, what drove urgency is to come into the office is essentially that they have a pain, but they still don't know what's causing the pain. And instead of the doctor finding that, they just start describing medications, but the goal of the doctor was to prescribe medication regardless of what medication that was. That's pain-centric selling. And that's what we see as a gold medal within selling. So the third type of selling that, from my view, is absolutely groundbreaking in terms of what it is problem-centric selling. So to you all as a buyer, you already nailed it, that we need to, as a buyer, all we need to do is solve a problem. So in problem-centric selling, a patient walks into the doctor's office. The doctor leads with, where are you having pain? How aggressive is that, et cetera. But then the doctor asks a lot of different questions, trying to understand what's wrong with the person. Some of them seem arbitrary, some of them don't, of like, okay, have you been sleeping more than usual? Are your eyes starting to dry up, before you go to bed? And the patient starts answering these questions, but the doctor's goal is to understand what is causing that pain so that they can solve that problem using a medication. That's the most effective type of selling. That's 0.00001% of the time what's effectively done on a sales floor. But the danger of that is meaning the danger of not selling like this is, like you mentioned, buyers are buying to solve a problem. And sometimes they don't even know what the problem is, or sometimes they don't even know if a problem exists at all. But they're coming into the office based on pain. And it is our goal, from my perspective as a seller, to sell based on problem. So the goal of a buyer is, I need to solve a problem. I want to buy the fewest amount of products to do that. I want to buy them at the lowest ticket price, and I want to buy them at a lower ticket price in comparison to my peers. So let's transition for a second to a seller. So I want everyone to put their sales hat on. As a seller, when I walk into the buying and selling game, what is my goal as a seller? What am I trying to do? Let's see if people can jump in the chat. And what are you goal to do as a seller? What's your win as a seller? We'll see if people leave me hanging. There you go. We already got it from the ambition team, to get money. Bingo. Christine already got it. Sell as much as you can while helping the prospect achieve your goal. But bingo, selling as much as you can. So the goal, what are you metric to drive as a seller? What do you KPI, comped, etc. on? Revenue. Bingo. Christine nailed it. So your goal as a seller is to get new buyers and to sell them products. So as a seller, do you want to sell the most amount of products, or do you want to sell the fewest amount of products? What is a win to you as a seller? Most or fewest amount of products? Most. Joe got it. And do you want to sell those products at the highest price tag, or do you want to sell them at the lowest price tag? So do you want to give them the discounted rate, or do you want to go at market cost? What is the win to a seller? Joe, I might just pick on you since you've got so many smart answers. Am I trying to, market cost, bingo. So Christine, Joe already got it. So as the goal of a buyer is that I solve my problems by buying the fewest amount of products at the lowest ticket price, in comparison to my peers. As a seller, you all nailed it. The goal of a seller is for quota attainment, to sell the most frequently that I can, to sell the most deals, to sell the biggest deal size, to sell the highest amount of products, and to sell those products at the highest ticket price possible. So the question that is often asked is, why is there mistrust between a buyer and a seller? Why do people see sellers as snake oil salespeople? Why do they see them as someone who's pushy? Why do we view sellers in such a poor manner? And the mistrust exists because what a buyer wants and what a seller wants very rarely, if ever, intersect. As a buyer, I want to buy the fewest amount of products at the lowest ticket price to solve my problem. As a seller, I want to sell the most amount of products, within ethics and reason, but the highest amount of products to the most amount of buyers at the highest ticket price for no discounts. So what we want in this situation is a bartering situation, because our goals in this game are mutually exclusive. So no matter what we say, no matter what our traits are, and no matter who we are internally, the role of a seller is what is crippling most deals. If they see you as a seller, then they inherently see you as an opponent. They see you as someone who is after different goals than they are, that your wins are completely different. So now let's transition for a second. And I know that I asked this at the beginning. When you think of salespeople, I want you to jump into the chat. I'm going to make you work for this session. It's the last session of the day. So, after this, you're done. But what traits do you think of when you think of salespeople? When I say a salesperson, imagine someone coming up to you at like a mall, and with a clipboard, or someone who's a telemarketer. What are the traits that come to mind? So we got it. You're all nailing it. Chad, relentless, commission breath from Michelle, pushy from Joe, persistent, commission breath again, Pushy from Arash. These are all amazing, meaning they're all correct. Let's just say that they're all accurate, at least from my point of view. Selfish, Joe. Sleazy. So what do you mean by selfish, Joe? I'll make you answer that and double down. So these are the traits that we think of whenever we think of salespeople. You know, we think of these awful traits. They're selfish, they're sleazy, they've got commission breath, they're going to be pushy. You know, these are all the things that essentially flood in our mind whenever we think of a salesperson. So in this game of buying and selling, because our goals are mutually exclusive, as a buyer, I want to buy for the lowest ticket price. And as a seller, I want to sell for the highest ticket price. We're going to withhold a certain amount of information from each other because it's a game. So I want you to put your buyer hat back on. As a buyer, when I'm buying something, what's an example of some information that I would withhold from the seller? I mean, this is going to be funny because this is all based on, you know, y'all's answer. My budget, bingo. Number one, how much budget that I have? What else? Max that I'm willing to spend. Great one, Annika. Max that I'm willing to spend for the day. What else? What else would I withhold from a seller? Because I know, because I'm scared of them. Competitors quote, bingo, Craig. Am I evaluating a competitor? What is the number there? My actual timeline. It's another great one. How quickly am I going to buy? What else? What's something else that I would withhold as a buyer? Here's one more in my head. Who is the decision maker? Michelle got it. Am I the decision maker? And yeah, Travis, that's the first time I've heard that, whether I've already made up my mind or not. So we're going to withhold all of this information, what budget we have, what timeline we're on, if we're the decision maker, are we looking at competitors in this game because we want to gain it to our advantage. There's one more thing that we withhold as a buyer. Let me see if anyone can guess it. And it's a big one that we have started to withhold because it's leveraging power over us. I'll give you a hint. Let's see if anyone can guess it. What's one more piece of information that we would start to withhold from a seller? Budget, sentiment. Sentiment, we're getting there. What do you mean by sentiment, Annika? What's one more thing that we would withhold from a seller? How I feel about the purchase, that's another one. So the biggest one that I hear, seller, yes. Buyer process, it's a good one, Craig. I didn't even think of that one. What's another one? It's even deeper. What's something that I withhold from a seller? Yeah, go Craig. He is giving good answers. The number one thing and the most crippling thing that I'm withholding from the selling team that I see more often than not is my pain. Bingo, Christine got it at the same time. Christine, a million points. I'm withholding all my pain. And Christine, in the meantime, kind of while I'm chatting here, I want you to go into why would I withhold my pain? This is someone who hypothetically can help me. Why on earth would I withhold my pain from a seller? Why would that hurt me? You know, in our conversation, I don't want to be sold. That's one reason. Bingo. I don't want them to be manipulated. Christine, you nailed it again. You're afraid that you're going to be oversold because bingo, Joe got it too. I don't want to give up my leverage. If I give away my pain and I give away the level of that pain, and if I give away my problem, then it can tick up in the seller's mind how badly I need something. So they can raise price because they know that I need it. So the one thing that a seller needs to diagnose is the one thing that a buyer is going to withhold. Number one, because they know that the more problems they say they have, it ticks up in your brain how much they need you, how much they need your product. And we're inherently scared that the seller is going to push up the price and sell us on stuff we don't know about because they know that we have pain. So pain and problems, it is our job to figure out what those are and to make it so attractive to our buyer by ensuring that they know we're in their corner that they are willing to give us up some of this information. So that's part of selling, is getting into a place where you've added rapport to where they trust you to give you that information. So let's transition for a second. I want you to put your seller hat on. And I promise then I'll go into what we can do about this. Your seller hat on. In the buying and selling game, what's an example of a piece of information that I would withhold as a seller from my buyer because my goal is to sell them? What's some information that I would keep to myself and not tell a buyer because my goal is that I need to sell? Yes, bingo. Lowest cost. How much can I discount something? Price. How much wiggle room is there? So what my net cost is, discounts. These are all correct. We withhold the information of how low can we go? How low would we be willing to go? So for anyone who's ever been pushed to, or who has given an end of Q4 discount, all you're doing is broadcasting to your buyer that essentially you had wiggle room from the start, but you wouldn't give it to them. So it's ticking up in their mind how much they can't trust you. What's another piece of information that we would withhold as a seller from the buyer on the sales floor? Very, very important one. And then I promise I will move, I will keep going. What's another piece of information that I would want to hide from a buyer whenever we're going into this buying and selling mentality? Let's see if anyone can guess it. I'm going to give 10 seconds and then we can go into it if y'all are done playing my game. So, or done opening up. So the number one thing that I hear, my commission, that's another one, Jared. I want you to go a little bit further. So get off of the money. What's something that I would withhold that doesn't have to do with money from my buyer? So the number one thing that I see, yes. Double down there, Travis, whether or not I can actually solve a pain. Does my product work? Can it solve the problems that we say that we can solve? Has it solved the problems that we say it can solve? I know that we trumpet case studies, but what about all the other people who used our product? Did they see the same results? Did they get the average ROI that we say is there? Is our product broken? Are there bugs? Are there times, has anyone on the line ever been demoing a product whenever a bug comes up in the middle of the demo and we're like, oh shoot, that never happens? But does the product work is one of the big items that we're withholding from our buying community. So I'd say I'd hate to be so discerning and so biblical this early in the conversation, but make no mistake, buyers and sellers are at war because they have different goals that are mutually exclusive. And so they're going to withhold information from one another, regardless of the character. You know, so people typically don't know, they view their competitor, you know, a competitive software, for instance, they don't even know everyone who works there, but they assume that they're a terrible person whenever they walk up to them because that's their competitor. So that's the mindset. So let's talk about the pattern of a sales email. Now we know they're at war. We know why. We know things that they'll hold back as information. We know the traits that we think about when we think about a salesperson. So let's go into when do we think about a salesperson? So I'm just going to blitz through this so that I don't get too much answer fatigue. But the pattern of a sales email is going to be basically a conglomerate of when I receive a sales email, what does it look like? First line, second line, last line, and signature. So if you want to jump in the chat and start talking about all the common phrases that people use in sales emails and what the first line's objective is, second line objective is, the last line looks like, and the signature. So first line, I'll typically hear that the first line is going to be, hi blank, my name is blank, and I'm with blank, and we're and second line we're the number one blank that helps blank do blank. Here's some social proof of orgs that we've helped. 3 enterprise examples. We've helped blank, and blank do this. The last line is a CTA. If you give me 15 minutes for a quick chat, and I'm like, oh, if it's quick, okay, cool, I'll do it. That somehow turns into a 45-minute meeting with somebody else than who I'm talking to currently to unpack how we're doing this. And then an assumptive close, best regards, looking forward to it. There's one signature that drives me more nuts than anything. And let's see if you can guess it in the chat. The last signature, the signature before you sign out. But that is the pattern of a sales email. I'm with blank. We do this. We help blank do blank. Here's the social proof. Here's the CTA. 15 minutes for a quick chat. Cheers. That's the worst signature. And then they sign it. That's the pattern of a sales email. In terms of the phrases that we commonly use, just circling back, just checking back in, just bubbling this to the top of your inbox, wanted to poke my head back in, happy Monday, hope you and your kids are safe during these uncertain times, hope all is well, hope this email finds you well. I could go all day long, looking forward to it, quick sync, 15-minute chat, connect, etc. Those are the common phrases. Mutual benefit, we have mutual connections, let's connect. The problem with all of these different techniques, and the problem with all of these phrases, and the problem with all of that pattern of a sales email is not that it's bad. It's not that it's wrong. It's not that it's ineffective. It's not that it's that you're not communicating well. The problem with all of those phrases is that they're commonly used sales phrases by salespeople. And when I scroll up and I look into all of the traits that we think about when we think about a salesperson, is that they're pushy. I'm going to use your words: pushy, competitive, relentless. They have commission breath. They're selfish, they're sleazy. So anytime we use some of these phrases and we use the pattern of a sales email that's dictated, like I just mentioned, we're hitting the pattern in someone's mind when they open the email that we're a salesperson, and all of these traits flood in their brain along with it. And they inherently believe that you're going to try, that the salesperson is going to try and push product on them at all costs and withhold information, whether it's a good decision for them or a bad decision, because they have to hit quota. So I want to go into today the 6 different ways that you can interrupt that pattern, and how do you prove to your buyer that you are not a seller? How can you, from a high level, prove to them that you are not the typical seller so that they don't start withholding information and you can have full visibility into the deal? So the number one way or the first way, and I'm going to be pretty brief here. I know we only have an hour in total. So the number one way is going to be deferring glory away from yourself. Not talking about how great your company is, avoid saying that you're number one, focusing on the prospect in the conversation, making your customer the hero in your social proof, not you, and highlighting content of other authors other than your own company. So I want to tell a story here because it's extremely relevant. Mark McWaters, who I mentioned him every single time, whether he knows it or not, on the tour when I was doing this 9 times over. Every time I get on he's the VP of sales over at Ambition. Every time I get on the phone with him, he makes the entire conversation about me. He asks me questions. He asks me what's going on in my life. He doubles down. He asks for details. He asks me what's one thing that meant something a lot, to me over the last month, something I'm excited about. He asks me what's going on with me. He knows what problems I'm running into. And then he ends the call. I know very little about Mark. I think he has 2 kids, maybe. I think he's married. I know very few details about what Mark's up to, how he's doing, how he's feeling. My view of Mark is that he's one of the most selfless human beings that I know, because he makes the entire conversation when we interact about me. So I'm drawn to him, to open up to him constantly, because he makes the entire conversation about me, talking about all the things I'm running into. You want to Mark McWaters your prospects. A quick way to not say great things about yourself all day long is to not say anything about yourself, is to make the conversation about them. The reality is that you already know all of the things about your product, or a good amount about your product. The things you don't know are about your buyer, what they're running into, what's happening internally, what's going on with them, how are they metriced, are they running up against that metric well, what are the problems that they have, what are the pains that they have, etc. So the number one way to make the conversation inherently about inherently where you're deferring glory, where you're not being a glory hog, where you're not the sales rep ringing the gong, where you're not the sales rep who's boasting all day long about yourself, is to make the conversation completely and entirely about your prospect, because that's what they care about. They don't care about me. They don't care about the seller. They don't even care about your product. What they care about is themselves. How can they solve their own problems, and can they use you to do that? So the number one way is deferring the glory away from yourself, but focusing on highlighting others and finding a way to make the conversation completely and entirely about your prospect, so that you can break through the pattern of they see you as a glory hog, so to speak, seller. The second way is what I would call the truth point, to interrupt this pattern. So it's pretty simple in theory. Tell the truth. Tell the truth. Tell them when you wouldn't buy your product. Tell them something that your company doesn't specialize in. Tell them something that your company doesn't do well. Downsell them. Operate as if you were the buyer. What would be the smartest way to buy your product? Help them game your own system. Be in their corner by telling the truth. It's really sad, from my view, and it's not salespeople's fault. We're comped to blow out quota. I would argue that even if your goal is to just, yeah, great, Christine, help them understand how to buy, be their advocate. If you were their family member and you loved them, how would you instruct them and help them to buy? First, you need to know the problem that they're running into. Bingo, Joe. Brilliant. Act as a consultant. Figure out what's the problem, and then help them game the system of how to buy you more cheaply and what they really need you for. What are the things they don't really need you for? When can you downsell them? I love when I can downsell, because when you do, you're going to gain inherent trust. Because if you're willing to tell them a truth when it wasn't to your advantage, they're willing to trust you when you do tell them a truth to the counter. So an example being, I was in a Nordstrom about a couple months ago, and there was a sales associate helping me, and I was on the fence about a shirt. And I was going back and forth kind of audibly out loud. I'm like, well, I like this, I don't like this, etc. And then I go, oh, shoot, there's a stain on it. And the woman who was helping me said, yeah, I know, I saw it a couple minutes ago. And I'm like, what the hell, Lauren? I thought we were girlfriends. Why was I pissed? Why was I pissed at Lauren? In the moment, Lauren did me dirty. She saw something on the shirt that would make me not want to buy, that she wouldn't want to buy because of. But because she's comped on selling me that shirt, she withheld the information. So when we tell our buyers, hey, there's something on this shirt, we might sacrifice a short-term sale. Maybe. In my experience, you actually gain somehow a sale no matter what, because it's so counterintuitive to them. I cannot tell you the amount of people that I've told them the list of reasons why I would not buy, or not buy now, or buy a smaller version of what they were trying to buy. And they fight me the other way. They're waiting to buy some aggressive level of service because I had their back. So this is going to be the most groundbreaking way to all of a sudden get into their corner, so that they realize when you're telling them things that you're in their corner. So when you tell them they do need something based on your experience, that they're willing to believe you. The third one, I got to speed up here, is adding value when there's nothing in it for you. You're not proving an agenda. You're not after an agenda. You're not the hero in the value. And it is not leading them to believe that your use case is legitimate. So there's a lot of different ways to do this. Value is a term on LinkedIn that is thrown about. By the way, I don't know if any of you have had the idea like I did of playing a drinking game with the term value when it's used on LinkedIn. And I cannot stress how much I do not recommend. But value, in this case scenario, there's 12 different examples that I put up here in descending order of where you're going to see the highest punch. So a client for them, a network introduction, a relevant underscored gift, a non-company related event, a community that they can take part in, an idea on how they can do something more cheaply, how they can do something more quickly, identifying for them a problem that they have that your product doesn't solve for, an intro to someone that they need, like an accountant, or whatever they bring up, a book list, a podcast, a webinar, an article. What's common among all of these is it needs to be not produced by your company. So there are 3 types of content that you can produce: first party, second party, third party. First party is I'm the arbiter of information, meaning I'm the one who decides what's published and it's of my own data. Second party is I'm the arbiter of information, but it's someone else's data or content. And then third party is going to be like a review platform of people are going rogue and they're throwing up what their opinion is. So first party and second party, we typically, because I, as the company, am the one selecting the material, I'm not going to trust it inherently. So heaven forbid I send them over a product one-sheeter and when I'm trying to book a meeting with them. But if you try to focus on sending over a podcast or a webinar or an article that you didn't write, trust me, product teams across America, product marketing teams absolutely loathe when I walk in the door for multitude of reasons. But one of them is that I suggest when you send over this marketing, or when you send over any kind of podcast, webinar, article, especially in the nascent stages of your relationship, sending over something that you didn't write. If like they're a VP of sales, I'm going to send them over an article of like the top 20 questions VPs of sales should be asking, written by someone else. Not only will they gobble that up more, but they need to feel like you have their back, regardless of whether there's something in it for you or not. So you want to go away from the agenda of getting them to buy your product, away from anything that you're publishing, and try to add value to them, whether it nets in a win for you or not. So here's a lot of different ways in which you can do that. Heaven forbid that what they're metriced on. I had someone a client of mine send me a introduction to the head of global sales enablement for a Fortune 100 company. He called me one day, he said, "Hey, can I ask you a small favor?" I'm like, "You can have the keys to my car." You can have whatever you want from me, because he added value to me when there was nothing in it for him. So way number 3 to break that pattern is to, instead of renewal selling by showing up in November and saying, "Hey, it's me again. Can I be super, nice to you? Can I treat you to dinner?" Start having a regular cadence from January 1, of the former year all the way up to November. So when you come around in November, it's a no dud of them because you added so much value along the way. Way number 4, I'm going to speed up here. I'm probably not going to go into the second pattern because I've been to diatribe, for lack of better terms. Way number 4 is going to be the elephant in the room to interrupt this pattern. So there's 4 ways you can do this. Maybe it's me, but I get the feeling that, is it just me, or I feel like, and then correct me if I'm wrong. And then you want to state what you think is going on in a situation. So I think that we have the common misconception, specifically in the US, is where it's very prevalent, is that being direct is being impolite. And so we start to be indirect because we think that that's more polite. And how that can pan out to the negative on the phone is, you know, you download someone's or someone downloads your content. You call them and say, hey, I noticed you downloaded my content. They say, yeah. Did you have any questions? No. Okay, well, see ya. What I was really after was the meeting, you know, so it's not a favor to them to be indirect in what you want. And it's not a favor to them to not say the information, even if it's hard, on the line. So little kids, I'm actually home in Dallas for a couple of days, and my nieces and nephews are downstairs. The oldest is 9, there's 4 of them. My sister has 4 kids. The oldest is 9, down to 3. The youngest, Ben, is 3. And when they get scared, they pull the covers over their head. They call me Aunt B. They're like, Aunt B, can you come in here real quick? They're scared that a monster exists. When they pull the covers over their head, it doesn't change net if there is a monster out there or not. But what it changes is their view of it. So a lot of times in sales and relationships and anything in general, I'll just speak for myself. It's hard to say the information that you know is true because you don't want to admit it. And the damage of not saying it is, number 1, if it isn't true, then you go on with a common myth. But if it is true, then saying it out loud and getting confirmation, worst case scenario, you can move on from the deal. But in most case scenarios, at least in my experience, you can do something about it. So I use this a lot during the selling process, specifically later stages. Maybe it's me, but I get the feeling that I blew it in that first meeting. I missed those couple 2 elements in discovery. And now you're very fairly going with my competitor. Did I get that right? And you'll hear them, you're leading with, and I don't have time to go too much into ego states because I've been too long-winded, but you're leading with the adult ego state. So I think the theory is that you can't change someone else. And I disagree. You can a lot of times, but how you do it is by changing yourself. So if I lead with the adult ego state and I communicate to my prospect without emotion, specifically negative emotion, hey, maybe it's me, but I blew it. And now I think you're very fairly going with my competitor. Did I get that right? You'll hear them enter into the adult ego state, and their perception is, you just communicated to me very maturely that it's okay for me to tell you the truth. So I said, hey, Mom, you know, I've been doing the math, and I don't know. I don't think mathematically that it's possible for Santa to be real. I think that you're Santa instead, and that you, because you love me, put presents under the Christmas tree. Did I get that right? If a child did that, they're communicating that they have the maturity to handle the information. And so the person can respond with telling the truth. So if you ever have people going dark, if you ever have prospects going dark on you, for instance, you demo, you send them an email, they don't respond back. You send another email, they don't respond back again. The reality is that they don't believe, whether it's hard to hear or not, they don't, and I've been in this situation, they don't believe that you aren't going to try and close them anyway, even if they tell you the information, and they don't believe that you can handle the truth. So they ghost you because it's easier. So they don't believe that they can say, hey, we're going with your competitor, and that you're not going to fight tooth and nail, and they don't want that. So they just ghost you. So this is a great way to interrupt that normal sales behavior by saying, maybe it's me, but I get the feeling that, I use this in breakup emails a lot. Maybe it's me, but I get the feeling that, it's got to be emotionless, specifically if it's negative. Maybe it's me, but I get the feeling that, you know, I didn't hit anything relevant with you, and a meeting right now just doesn't make sense, and I'm the annoying sales rep who can't take a hint. So when you do that and you lead with a reality that isn't advantageous to you, you're going to break through the pattern of what a normal sales meeting goes like. So typically what I see in sales meetings is the seller's talking, the buyer's listening, then the seller leaves the room and they say, thanks so much for the time today. The line ends. The person who is the buyer turns to the other person who's a prospective buyer in the room, and they usually ask one question to their peer internally. Let's see if you can guess what that question is normally. So someone's selling to us, the seller leaves the room, and then I turn to the person on my team, and what's the question that I normally ask to them? But these minutes are going to be filled with the 5 most important minutes of any meeting to a seller. So it looks like I bored everyone to sleep, or no one's willing to engage with me anymore. Usually the question that I hear is someone's trying to sell to me. They leave, bingo, Brian, you nailed it. What do you think? Seller tried to sell to me. Seller leaves the room. I turn to my peer and I say, what do you think? They're like, I liked this piece. I didn't like this piece. I think that we can use this piece to solve this. I don't think that they're as good as their competitor at this part of the game. They're a little expensive, but maybe we can get it within budget. That information is the most valuable information to the seller, but you can't get there unless you interrupt the pattern. So a quick way to do this is this technique, calling out the elephant in the room. Maybe it's me and I'd be assumptive, but I get the feeling that, and then just call out whatever negative reality you think is likely happening in the room. The 5th way to interrupt the pattern, and then we can close out here with the 6th, and then we'll close out for the day. The 5th way to interrupt the pattern is knowing who they are. So this always makes my stomach churn whenever I bring up the slide, because the pattern interrupt is to know who they are. Meaning the pattern of a salesperson is to not. So personalization is a great way to do this. Knowing one fact about them. People are like, oh, that's crazy. Well, you want to know them. Knowing one thing about them, knowing their trajectory, knowing what their company does before you do any kind of outreach to them. Usually I go into a litany of different things of how you can scale this. Maybe we could send that in follow up, but there's a way to personalize at scale. And I would suggest that's one of the pieces. People wonder why I'm such an advocate of personalization, and it's because no one's doing it. So it's a pattern interrupt, that you know something about them and you make the conversation about them. The reason I think of Mark whenever I think of someone who focuses on me is because there's extremely few people that I know that do that. So Mark's a pattern interrupt. How he converses with people is a pattern interrupt, because he makes a conversation about you. So knowing one thing about them, that would be relevant to you in the product or just in general, knowing events that happened to them, were they acquired? Did they buy another company? Did they just receive funding? Knowing something about their company. The last one is knowing what your buyer is metriced on. There's a myth in the sales industry, from my perspective, where people say selling is a transferable skill and you can do it from company to company. And I'm like, sure, if you don't know your buyer, care about knowing your buyer, because every time I shift companies, I shift buyers. So I would mentally make a list of, if I have 5 buyers, do I know what they're metriced on? If I sell into a VP of HR, do I know what they're metriced on? Do I know what their leading indicators are? Do I know what their leaning indicators are? Do I know what their lagging indicators are? And I get the kickback often of like, well, we don't know what this is. And I'm like, well, that's the first step. If I want to talk to Jamie, for instance, or I want to talk to any of the Ambition team about being an expert in Chattanooga, I think is how you say it, I probably wouldn't be able to accomplish my goal if I don't know how to say it. So look, I said it wrong. So if I told them I'm a Chattanooga expert, they'd be thinking, we don't live there. We don't we that's not how you say it. Right? So how am I supposed to establish to them, that that I'm an expert in their role if I don't even know what they're metriced on. If I didn't know that sales reps are measured on quota attainment, I'd have a hard time giving any kind of information to them about being a sales rep because I don't even know what they're metriced on. So I would start there. This is going to be a journey, is to get to know your buyer from soup to nuts. But I would suggest, understanding what are they metriced on, what do they run into in their day-to-day and macro, so that you can understand how you can solve for that in micro in the day-to-day. And then the last one is going to be being self-aware and accountable. So the antithesis of this, most sales reps that I see specifically in breakup emails are going to associate guilt to the prospect for not responding. If like I've called you 10 times and you haven't picked up, or blame to them, or insulting them. You must not be the decision maker. I've done everything that I can, but I haven't heard a response. You must not value data, not value enabling your team, or be off on an island somewhere. But the antithesis to this is being completely self-aware and being accountable for what happened. So someone who's crazy doesn't know that they're crazy. Someone who's a sales rep doesn't really know that they're being salesy. So leading with a great way to do this, and there's a number of different examples up here, not to be the annoying sales rep that pings you twice, not to be creepy, but it looks like you were on our website earlier. And I call it the not to switch, but essentially telling someone not to say what you think that they're thinking, and then saying, and you can go ahead. So I do this a lot in common VC emails of like, not to be all, reason for my outreach is I noticed that you, Bessemer, is an investor in your company, not to be all, hey, we share a common VC, want to buy my stuff, and it interrupts the pattern in their head. Another quick way to do it is, before you say it, I know what you're thinking. Why is this trainer continuing to go when she only has 30 seconds left in the game? Haven't we heard enough already? And the more that you can call out exactly what they're thinking, the more your rapport you're going to win with them. So kind of from a high level summary, just so everyone has it, the first way is deferring glory away from yourself. Second way is telling the truth. The third way is adding value when it doesn't result in a win for you. Cracking through by calling out the elephant in the room, knowing who they are, and being self-aware aware and accountable. But I hope that the takeaway is this: our buyers are waiting for us to be in their corner, and they're waiting to see who we are. I think the biggest question is, are we willing to let them? And are we willing to have their back in the selling process? And I think you'd be very pleasantly surprised with how they respond to that, and the behavior and relationship and the trust that's built along the way. So that's everything for today. Thanks, Jamie and the Ambition team, for having me. Y'all are incredible. Go buy Ambition.
Thank you. If you're not, you can't. No, thank you so much, Becc. That was so helpful. And I felt really called out because I used cheers occasionally, and I'm never doing it ever again after that. So that was really great. Technically, I'm not a salesperson anymore. So, but everything you said is so true. Just, I mean, at the end of the day, like, I don't stop being a human being because I go to my job too. So I think just talking to people like a normal person could go so far. And I think this is a great reminder. So thank you so much, Becc. Again, we'll send the recording. And yeah, welcome to, or I guess the conclusion of the third customer summit. What a hell of a day. Couldn't ended it on a finer note. So thank you, Becc.
No, thank you for having me. Go buy Ambition, everyone. Ambition's amazing. I'm an advocate for them because Jamie never was. So if you have friends that haven't bought Ambition, have them buy it. If you met someone who hasn't bought Ambition, have them buy it.
I'm just trying to like follow your steps. I'm letting you do for me. All right. Bye, guys.
Thank you very much. Bye.